Hello and welcome. I'm Ashley from The Ugly Sheep, and today let's talk about flax spinning and what I need to do to make my distaff usable. For those that don't know, this is a distaff for long fibers. Flax is one of them. It can grow 3 to 4 feet tall, and most of that flax is fiber that you can spin after you process it. So I've been growing flax for 2 years now. This year will be 3, and I've processed exactly 0 of it. I did, however, take a class to learn to spin it. And one of the things that I need for my distaff to work properly is a ribbon. So today I thought we'd make it. My magical couch cushion here has leftover yarn from a previous project I made, and it seemed like a great way to destash and make something that I actually need in order to process all of the flax into linen, first thread and then cloth. And to do that, we're going to set up my Inkle Loom. So come with me while I weave a ribbon for my distaff, so that I can hopefully one day weave with all the flax that I have grown. Once I have my pattern and warping structure and colors chosen, the first thing that I choose to do is wind my shuttles. It's just an easy part of the process that kind of lets me put my colors together and make sure that I'm happy with them before I start the harder and tedious part of the project, which is warping the loom. In this case, you see that I am winding the yarn around the middle and one side of the shuttle, and that's because the other side of the shuttle is the beater for this type of loom. And I'll explain that more once we get into weaving. So I almost didn't make a video of this project because it was so simple of a project to do, and I didn't think there'd be a lot to talk about. Except when I started to warp my loom, I started warping it wrong. Apparently, I forgot how to warp this loom, and I'll figure that out momentarily and start warping it correctly after I take everything off that I put on. But we'll just jump ahead to where I actually know how to warp my loom. Now that I'm actually warping the loom correctly, you see me loosely tying on the first end of the warp to a hook on my loom. Not all looms come with that hook, and in fact I actually added that hook on to make it easier, because you're supposed to make a slip knot so that you can pull it easily and tie the first and last end together, but I just never did that really well. So I added a hook onto the front part of my loom in order to attach the yarn there. And then I alternate between a heddled piece of yarn that will not move and an unheddled piece of yarn that will move up and down to make my sheds for weaving. And it is all done fairly easily with just yarn that I had laying around to make the heddles, and I just follow the pegs around, and one strand goes above that top peg and one goes under, depending on whether it is heddled or not heddled. And that creates the basis of the warp. So this is actually a very, very simple loom to weave on and to warp up. Once you have all your warp threads on the loom, you need to cut off the final edge and tie a knot connecting the first warp string with the last warp string in order to make sure everything is connected. But you have to make sure your knots allow the whole warp to move forward and backwards, because that is how you advance your warp. Once you do that, in order to spread your threads, I just use popsicle sticks for 2 or 3 different reps in order to make sure everything is nice and tight. Now, this is also a knitting yarn, and so it is very stretchy. So there's a couple things to note about this. One, I had to be very careful while warping it, because if you pull too tight in one area and not on the other, it will give you very uneven tension. The other thing is that as I weave, you'll see that I just pull the yarn forward instead of loosening the knob and adjusting the tension on my loom. And that's because it's so stretchy that I actually just pull the stretch out of it to pull it, give me the slack that I need to pull the warp down to continue weaving. As you can see as I weave, I am pushing the weft threads, which are the threads that I am weaving with back and forth, down with the shuttle. And that is what's called a beater in weaving. And that allows me to make sure all of the weft threads are evenly spaced throughout the warp so you get a nice even weave. Inkle weaving is mostly plain weave, and what I am using right now, the pattern is plain weave and warp face, meaning you will only see the warp of my weaving. You should not see the weft threads that I am using, which is also why I'm using the same color as my outermost threads while I'm weaving, because that helps to hide my threads on the outside as I'm changing sheds to go back and forth, so that you don't see blips of weird color as I'm weaving along the edges. Despite all of the outfit changes you're seeing here, the ribbon did not actually take that long to weave. I started it Friday night and finished it Sunday morning, and that's only because I had a lot of plans on Saturday, so I didn't really get to weave a whole lot. In total, I would say that it took less than 8 hours from start to finish to weave this. These small bands are actually very quick to weave and to make. You know you're finished weaving when you can no longer get a clear shed and you've pulled your warp as far forward as you can. Once you have your warp as woven fully as you can, you just simply cut it off. And I decided to make knots on either end of my warp to tie off the ends to make them look nice and usable. You could also sew them or turn them under and make a proper hem as well. But I chose not to do either of those options because this is really just something that I use to tie on fiber to a distaff. So I didn't feel the need to put in a lot of effort into the finishing. I can always go back and do a line of stitching just above the knot and cut off the knot and do a proper hem if I choose to do that at a later time. And here I actually have to undo the early part of my weaving because I did not plan properly and put enough head in the warp to allow me to knot it and have enough tasseled so that the knot did not come undone. So that wouldn't normally need to be done if I had planned properly. The ribbon was actually really hard to show on video, so I took a picture here instead. In total, it was 64 inches long, which will give me plenty of working space to use the ribbon. Tried to wear a dark shirt so you could see the ribbon because it's such a light color, but I don't think you're really going to be able to see it. But I finally have a handmade ribbon for my hand-carved distaff that I've been wanting for probably a year now. So I'm very excited and I can't wait to show you this summer how I process the flax that I already have and give you updates on the flax that I'm going to be planting this year to spin into linen. Till next time.